Hello, everyone. My name is Gary Baumgarten, but I expect you already know that. And I welcome you to this discussion on Facebook.com or Facebook Live and on paltalk.com. And today I'm honored to have with us the founder of Blue Lives Matter New York City. He's a sergeant with the New York Police Department, Joseph Imperatrice. Joseph Imperatrice, Sergeant Joe, as I called you when I first talked to you. Welcome to the discussion today.
Thank you for having me.
I'm glad to have you. You know, our society today is so divided that we're almost forced to take sides. Do we support the blue or do we support the black? And nowhere did we see this more than in the demonstration you held in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn over the weekend on Sunday, when there were Blue Lives Matter demonstrators and then Black Lives Matter demonstrators showed up, and there was a clash between the two, and it got a little violent. There were items thrown at the uniformed police officers and the supporters of the police, and there was a response by the police and by some of the demonstrators who chased at least one person into a nearby park. And I asked this question of my audience earlier on my Facebook timeline, Joe. Is it possible for me or any of us to support both Black Lives Matter and Blue Lives Matter, or is there a line in the sand? Sometimes I think there are forces that are trying to divide us all.
You can absolutely support both sides. I don't know why this whole political correctness. I don't know why people feel that it's quote unquote racist if you end up agreeing with one side and not the other. This world's gone mad, flat out, and we see it every single day. The counter protest. I was at the one in Queens the other day where I actually spoke, and you have the Black Lives Matter activists in one corner, and they're there just to incite a riot. But yet, you wouldn't see the other patriotic side going to a Black Lives Matter rally and trying to rile them up. And like you said, Bay Ridge, they were throwing eggs at police officers. They were throwing items at police officers. If you don't agree with what they have to say, you're against them, and that's not right in today's society.
You know, and that speaks to the larger problem of disrespect for the police today. And actually, I think Curtis Sliwa says it right, is that the police have been neutered in a lot of cities. And I think one of the cities, unfortunately, where the administration has cut off the cojones of the police is New York City. Now, let me just say, as I want to preface this question by just making it clear, and I'm sure you agree. If you don't, you can tell me. Nobody wants cops abusing citizens, whether they're black, white, brown. It doesn't matter. We don't want police abusing citizens. And it's been my experience covering the police for decades and decades that if there's one thing that a good cop hates more than anything is a bad cop, because it brings ill repute upon him or her as well. But that being said, the way some of the police officers are being taunted at the demonstrations, and I'm not again suggesting that all demonstrators agree with this tactic. It's just absolutely disgusting. Nose to nose and toes to toes. If anybody remembers Billy Martin, the way he used to get into the face of the umpires and kicking dirt in the face, and then he'd get ejected from the game when he was manager of the Yankees, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And the officers have to stand there impassively as people call them names, especially rough on black officers, calling them Uncle Tom and worse. How are officers supposed to do their jobs under such circumstances?
Well, let's get something straight. What happened to Mr. Floyd was absolutely outrageous. There's not one person I think ever during this whole discussion that agrees with it. Disgusting, criminal, not what police signed up for. But with that token said, that doesn't mean that officers in the NYPD, New York City, and the other 49 states deserve to be abused for what 4 individuals did thousands of miles away. Number one, it's the leadership in police departments all over the nation that's really suffering. They're not leading their troops. They're not telling them what's expected of them. But what's even worse is the political leadership that stands in front of a podium and condemns these officers when not one of these politicians is on the front lines being spit at, cursed at, with bricks thrown at. We spoke about this, a year ago, about the water bucket incidents in New York, and we said if we didn't stop and hold people accountable, it's going to get worse. And nearly 1 year later to the date, look at what's happening. It's because of weak leadership. If Mayor Giuliani and Bernard Kerik were in office, the first night this would have been shut down. You wouldn't see encampments outside of City Hall, people setting up tents, graffiti everywhere. It looks like Baltimore and downtown Manhattan. It's disgusting because of weak leadership. And we're going to have to vote these people out soon. But these poor men and women in blue, they're giving it their all, with lack of direction. They're still going out there every single day and putting their lives on the line for the people that they serve.
But some of the cops I know, and you may not want to publicly acknowledge this, but I will tell you from the officers I talk to, they don't even want to respond to calls anymore. The head of the lieutenants union put out a message, I think it was last week, to his membership saying, you have to be really, really cautious when you respond to the scene, because there will be people taunting you into taking actions that a friend will be standing by with an iPhone in their hands, videotaping it, posting it without any reference to what led up to the confrontation to make you look bad. And the way it is in New York City today and many other cities, if you react in a manner in which maybe you've even been trained to react, not only might you lose your job, you could actually face criminal charges.
Correct. And you are 100% right. There are people that are baiting police. They're setting up scenes. There are people waiting to try to hope that they provoke the officer to the point where they do something that will not look good on video. That's completely wrong. I don't think officers are afraid to respond to scenes. I think it's more of they're hesitant to take police action, meaning put their hands on individuals. We saw after the bill was trying to be pushed through in New York City with the chest compressions. We saw the officer in the Far Rockaways, where the officers were being taunted for about 10 or 15 minutes. And it appears that the individual picks up something and the officers took action. But right away, because it appears that the officer may have put this individual in a headlock, which right away they turn into a chokehold, they end up locking up this officer. But I think you saw within the last week, what about the citizen that put the officer in the headlock or quote unquote, chokehold? Why aren't we going after them and locking them up and holding them just as accountable? I don't like the terms that we hear all the time. So, well, officers are held to a higher standard. I get that. But laws shouldn't just be made to go against police officers. If I'm a human being, I'm a human no matter what uniform I'm wearing. So it should go both sides, whether I'm on the side of the law or whether I'm the bad guy. These laws have to be enforced across the board with no discrimination, no matter who you are.
Sergeant Joseph Imperatrice is our guest. He is the founder of Blue Lives New York City. He works for the NYPD. And we have a comment from Ren Froman, who says it's because of stop and frisk. There's a lot of ill will that was never put right. Did that set the tone in New York City for the confrontations we have today, that stop and frisk caused there to be tension between the Black community and the men and women in blue?
I love when people bring up that term because I need to correct them, and it's not their fault. It's the public. It's actually stop, question, and possibly frisk. The media has put it out there that they think that every time an officer stops someone, they're running through their pocket. So it's stop, question, and possibly frisk. And it was actually one of the best tools ever used until they used it as a measurement, kind of like how much activity an officer had. But we're seeing in the last 6 or 7 years under de Blasio, with that stop, question, and frisk policy kind of being pulled back, the guns going through the streets like it's candy, like it's going out of style. Last night at work, 9 shootings throughout Manhattan from 10 p.m. to 4:30 a.m. because individuals feel that they can carry these firearms. Now, the problem is the bad people are going to be the ones that push back the most in regards to law enforcement policy. It's not going to be the people that support law enforcement. So I wouldn't say that this policy goes against everyone out there, because you even see people of color nowadays saying, bring back stop, question, and possibly frisk. I'm going to tell you right now, there were times that we used to jump out of a van, go to the gangbangers and the drug dealers, and they didn't want us going near them. So they'd pull up their shirts, they'd turn around and say, officer, I have nothing on me. Because it got to the point that they knew that we were going after the right people, and it made cities and communities safer. But as we're seeing now, it's kind of falling back. So ill will, no. But you also have to understand it's the people that don't like law and order that are going to cause the most havoc. And those are going to be the people that we see on the news. So you can't always worry about them if the main goal is to make sure people are safe.
I will tell you from my own experience, for many years being a reporter on the streets of Detroit and then the streets of New York City when I was working for 1010 Wins, one of the unheard constituencies are actually the people who live in crime-ridden, predominantly Black neighborhoods, who actually want the police to be proactive and get the guns off the streets. Now, they don't want kids stopped just because they're Black and walking and not doing anything wrong and repeatedly stopped and frisked. But they do want the guns off the street because they are the ones who are victimized when the lead starts flying in their communities.
Well, let's talk about this too, and I'm glad you touched on that. There are so many great, hardworking people of all nationality that live in low-income neighborhoods, right? They do not deserve to come home and see the mobs of kids outside causing havoc, selling drugs, toting weapons. They don't deserve that. No matter if you live in Staten Island or the Bronx, all throughout the five boroughs, they need to feel safe. Now, you're 100% right. You shouldn't just be tossing a kid up against the wall, no matter what color, just to get a number. But when it comes to policing and that individual is known to commit crimes, you know their background, you see their rap sheet, maybe you keep a close eye on them, but it doesn't mean that you always have to go out there and put your hands on them. But once again, the people in these communities are very great, hardworking people, and they deserve to feel safe.
So are they feeling safe now, Sergeant Joseph
Absolutely not.
Imperatrice? Absolutely not, because
Absolutely
I know,
not.
and some of this falls on the cops, and I understand why, but a lot of cops I know say, the call comes in, we'll take our time responding, even if it's a priority call. Hopefully it'll be over by the time we get there so that we don't get involved in something that's going to get us in trouble, as I said earlier, either with the department or even with the district attorney.
Gary, we had a 1-year-old shot in Brooklyn the other day. A 1-year-old. I don't care. You're going to see some people saying, well, why was the baby out so late at night? Who cares? That's not the issue here.
Right.
The point
No,
is,
it's a hot summer night. He was with the child was with the parent. The child was in a stroller. Yep. The child was outside a playground. I have the right at 1 o'clock in the morning, where I live in my community, to take my 1-year-old granddaughter for a stroll if I want at 1 in the morning without having to worry about her getting hit by a stray bullet, as was the case with this child.
100% right, but that doesn't give the right to the people that jumped out of the car to brandish illegal firearms and shoot into a crowd and take the life of a 1-year-old. What the heck does a 1-year-old have to do with any of this? That's absolutely disgusting. And this is the city. These are the politicians that have caused this. Instead of our leaders going to these neighborhoods where gun violence is out of control, we have people in front of Trump Towers putting big yellow letters down to stick it to the president. Instead of trying to come up with a solution and say, how do we work towards getting the bad people off the streets? How do we work towards getting the bad people to stay in jail that shouldn't be on the streets? These are the issues we're having. And until we stop this tit for tat and realize what's important, it's going to continue to happen.
We know that because of the coronavirus here in New York City and elsewhere, budgets have to be cut. Police budgets, social service budgets, perhaps the Board of Education budgets, maybe trash collection. The cities don't have the revenue that they had before. But what's very disturbing to me, and here I'm giving my opinion, which I don't often do, but I will say it, what's very disturbing to me is that in New York City, when they cut the budgets of the other departments, it was for fiscal reasons. When they took $1 billion away from the cops, it wasn't for fiscal reasons, it was for political reasons.
Well, that's what this is. And, I don't agree with Governor Cuomo too often, but he came out probably a week or two ago and said, great, you just took $1 billion away. But what does that mean? Does that mean there's going to be less or more police brutality? Does that mean there's going to be reform? Does that mean more or less police officers? What does it mean? It's just a knee-jerk reaction. And that's not good because there's no game plan. And at the end of the day, $1 billion, yes, you can always trim the fat off of whatever, business or location or municipality. Yes, we can always reform and take money away. But if you want training, the issue is training costs money. There was a Blue Courage training they had throughout the nation for officers, which cost millions of dollars after 2014. Now, if you want all this reform and change, how are officers going to learn if there's not funds there for them to learn?
And by the way, I just want to point out this is happening elsewhere as well. Yesterday, it escapes me. I can't remember what community it was. It might have been Atlanta. I apologize if I'm wrong about this. Last night, somebody jumped out of a car and opened fire on some police officers. It was an ambush. And of course, it's not like the movies where you shoot and the bullet hits. 9 times out of 10, the bullet misses. And there were 4 juveniles, 4, who were struck by bullets that were intended for the cops. One of them, a 10-year-old, died. And in Detroit, my hometown, Motown, the other day, I don't know if you heard about this one, Joe, but the other day, there were a couple of officers in the 12th Precinct, Northwest Detroit, who were trying to arrest somebody who was wanted on warrants. And when they approached him, he said something to the effect, "You're not going to take me alive." And he pulled a gun out of his pocket. the officers still did not shoot. He fired at point blank range, 3 feet is point blank, aiming at the head of an officer, and thank God missed. The officers then, and again, I think it's the pressure that caused them to hesitate, which they should not have done. As soon as he pointed that gun, in my opinion, they should have blown him away. It wasn't until he fired the gun that the officers returned the fire and they killed him. And almost immediately on social media, it was misreported that the police shot an unarmed guy and the streets started to erupt. James Craig, who's a great police chief, if you follow him at all, I bet you wish he was your PC. He immediately called a news conference at the 12th precinct. And they, like only an hour or an hour and a half after the shooting, this is unprecedented, they showed the body cam footage showing that this guy had shot at the cops. And he implored the news media, please release this immediately to calm things down. But in the meantime, people on the streets are throwing bottles, bricks, and even a water cooler at the cops. How are we going to combat this kind of disinformation?
Well, you're saying it correctly, disinformation. A lot of politicians and media are releasing information that is false. Now, you're always going to hear people say, well, there's a disproportionate amount of blacks that people are going out there and just abusing and slaughtering, and that's completely false. I actually had a debate earlier, and I brought out some facts, and on average, whites are actually killed at the hands of police officers at a much higher rate than blacks are yearly. An officer is more likely to shoot at a white suspect rather than a black suspect. So people need to get their facts straight before they start going out there and rioting, because the majority of the time, it's false information they're being fed, and they're going out there and causing more issues. We're looking around, like you said, in Detroit, New York City, drive-by shootings. Where are we, in a third world country that it's 2020 and people are that brazen to go out there? Now we have this movement, Black Lives Matter. Now, why does Black Lives Matter only when police officers are involved? Last night, we had 9 shootings on one tour in Manhattan, with the majority being people of color and only one being white. Why aren't these groups going to those neighborhoods if those lives matter just as much? Because it's political gain, because the average citizen isn't going to stop them from doing more bad things. Only the cops are. So when you put pressure on the police officers and make them seem quote unquote racist, they back up because of the scare tactic, not because of the factual information presented at hand.
So Ren Fromm in our Facebook audience makes another point. She says, how can the police be trusted to catch the bad guys if they don't hold the bad apples accountable and the whistleblowers face backlash? Is that accurate? Is that accurate?
Not at all. What people don't understand is the majority of actual internal investigations that go on with police, and there's a ton of oversight, are by other officers that are actually going out there and making complaints or allegations. And I think it's over 90%. What people also don't see is every single day there's officers being suspended, modified for both on-duty and off-duty incidents. Officers nationwide don't need more oversight. You have local, city, state, federal oversight every single day. Civilian oversight. Police officers have more scrutiny and are actually already 1 foot. They pretty much go into a battle one hand tied behind their back nowadays, and people don't know that. They're not informed. So, unfortunately, I don't agree with that. There's tons of things that in the police world that we hate bad cops. You said it earlier. There's nothing more than a good cop that hates bad cops, and it makes us all look bad. We took an oath. 95, if not more percent, want to go out there and make a change. And, you don't stop sending your kids to school just because a teacher sexually harasses somebody. You don't stop going to church because you see a priest that allegedly did something, right? So why is it all of a sudden that the people that keep us safe in this world, we want to boycott them anytime you hear one incident out of the millions of interactions every single day?
Well, you say, Joe, that people don't understand that the cops have one arm tied behind their backs in many of our cities, including New York City today. But I will tell you, the perpetrators know it because they are very brazen on the street. I just want to bring, before we end our conversation, a comment from my friend, retired Detroit police officer David Mahalab, who says, if officers hesitate, they could be dead. Agitators try to incite protesters, political correctness. I'm sorry. The police chief he's talking about in Detroit did the right thing by releasing the video. But I think he's absolutely right. If you're afraid to take action based on your training, you're going to put yourself in mortal danger. I wouldn't want to be a cop today. Believe me, I used to have such great fun riding with David and other cops in Detroit because that was the atmosphere there. I could hop into a police car almost any time and ride with the cops. And, we had fun, actually. I mean, I had fun reporting on what was going out on the streets. Today, I wouldn't ride with them, much less be a cop.
Hesitation, he's 1,000% correct, is going to cost officers their lives every single day. We saw the radio transmission with Officer Dia, would tell my family I love them, showing up to try to get a bad guy off the streets, I believe in a Home Depot or a Walmart or wherever it was, and this young kid, 26 years old, shot and killed. No one talks about these instances. No one talks about, what was it, David Dorn, I believe, the gentleman, 77 years old, that was protecting the businesses during the riots. He was a sheriff, retired, person of color. No one talks about heroes like them, when people are doing wrong against them. But we only talk about the small instances of police officers because it's media worthy, and that's not fair. And you're going to continue to see more and more ambushes. We saw the 2 in Texas where the 2 cops were killed this past week. More cops are going to get killed in this climate because, number 1, they're afraid. Number 2, the political correctness. And number 3, they feel like nobody has their backs, and it's got to stop immediately.
Yeah, that was McAllen, Texas. I know it very well because my parents were Winter Texans and they lived in McAllen. And I actually know a couple of retired cops from my days hanging out in McAllen. So that one hit a little close to home as well. Joe, I've got to make sure I pronounce your name right because people botch it up all the time. Imperatrice, right?
Imperatrice, yes, sir.
Yeah, the head of the Blue Lives Matter New York City. I'm really glad to have had you on with me today. And please, you and your fellow officers, please stay safe.
Thank you very much. God bless.